Flax. Linen was made from flax plants. The stems were placed in water, then left to dry out in the sun. Once the fibers were dry and separated, the threads were woven together to create linen. The spies hid under the drying flax at Rahab's house. Steep walls. Canaan lies between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. The Bible featured all 6 of Canaan's geographical lands: the coastal plain, fertile foothills, central highlands, the plain of Megiddo, Galilee, and the Jordan Valley. Fortified towns with steep protective walls dominated these lands. Rahab ties a scarlet ribbon to her window. Rahab and the spies. After the death of Moses, the Lord told Joshua that the Israelites should get ready to cross the river Jordan and enter the land of Canaan. It will all be yours, from the desert to the Lebanon, and from the Euphrates River to the great sea in the west, he said. No one will be able to stand up to you. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you, but always be careful to obey the laws that my servant Moses gave you. Joshua told his people the Lord's message, but first he sent 2 spies ahead to Jericho on the west bank of the Jordan. Jericho was the most important city in the whole of Canaan. The 2 men set off through the desert at dead of night. Guided by the moon and the stars, they crossed the river and drew near to the city. The 2 spies hid among the palm trees until the sun began to rise. Then they slipped quietly through the city gates, just as they opened, mingling with the noisy traders and merchants. Like shadows, they flitted through the narrow streets and past the temple, hearing fearful talk about the Israelites on every corner. But the spies needed somewhere to lie low. They found a little house in the city walls that was perfect. It belonged to a woman named Rahab. She invited them in and told them to make themselves comfortable, offering them food and water. And soon she agreed to help them. By now, the ruler of Jericho had heard a rumor that some spies might have gotten into the city, and he was worried. He knew what a danger the Israelites were. They had wreaked death and destruction on the neighboring Amorites, and everybody had heard how the Lord had parted the waters of the Red Sea for them. He sent his henchmen to search every house in Jericho from top to bottom. Rahab had taken the 2 spies up to the roof of her house and had hidden them under some flax that she was drying in the sun. The henchmen arrived and asked her if she had seen the men. "They did come here," replied Rahab, smiling sweetly at them, "but I didn't know who they were. If only I'd known!" They searched her house anyway and climbed the steep steps up to the roof. All they saw were large bundles of plants laid out to dry. The men left to search the house next door. When they had gone, Rahab climbed up to the roof and gave the 2 spies the all clear. They emerged cautiously from the piles of flax and dusted themselves off. Rahab looked at them and said, "I know that the Lord has given this land to the Israelites. We have all heard about you. We are frightened. Please be kind to me and my family. Haven't I been kind to you? I beg you to spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters." The men smiled at each other and nodded. "A life for a life," they replied. "Help us to escape, and we will help to save you when we attack Jericho." They told her to tie a scarlet ribbon in her window when she heard that the Israelites were advancing. It would be a sign, and she and her family would be spared, but she must swear that she would not betray them. She agreed, thankfully, and went to find a thick rope. They waited till the middle of the night, when all was quiet and still in the city. Then they tiptoed to the window. Rahab took the rope and dropped it silently out of the window, tying it firmly to a thick beam inside. Then, one after the other, the men climbed down and landed outside the city walls. "Go to the hills and hide," Rahab whispered. "They'll never find you there." The spies stayed hidden for 3 days in the hills. Then they returned to Joshua and told him what had happened. Go to the hills and hide. Understanding the story, God reassures Joshua of his eternal presence on the journey to Canaan with the Israelites. The 2 spies sent to Jericho agree a bargain with Rahab. She will help the spies, and they in turn will spare her when the Israelites attack. The scarlet ribbon on the window will protect Rahab, just as the lamb's blood dabbed on the Israelites' door did on the night of the 10th plague in Egypt. Go to the hills and hide. Ancient Jericho. In Joshua's time, circa 1400 BCE, Canaan was divided into walled city-states, each with its own king. Lying close to the Jordan River, Jericho is the location of the world's oldest walled city, first built in circa 8000 BCE. These ruins at Tel es Sultan are evidence of settlements between circa 9600 BCE and 1400 BCE. Shofar. In this story, the priests blow on their shofars when storming Jericho. Today, the instrument is traditionally blown at the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. The blasting sounds of the shofar can still be heard in synagogues on holy days. Crafted from a ram's horn, it was steamed to make it more malleable before the wide end was bent into the typical shape of a trumpet. The Battle of Jericho. The two spies got back from Canaan, and they told Joshua that the country was gripped by fear. So the Israelites moved forward and made their camp by the side of the Jordan River. Joshua spoke to the assembled group. The Ark of the Covenant will go first, carried by the Levite priests. You must follow it, but at a distance. As soon as the priests set foot in the river, the waters will stop flowing. There will be a path of dry land to the other side, and you will all be able to cross safely. 3 days later, the priests led the way, carrying the ark, which contained the 2 stone tablets with the 10 Commandments written on them. Sure enough, as soon as they stepped in the water, the river stopped flowing, and they walked to the middle. They waited there with the golden ark glinting in the sun, and the Israelites started to walk across. Joshua chose 12 men, one from each tribe. He told them to stop in the middle of the dry path where the priests stood and to pick up a stone. They did this, and carried the stones to the other side. When all the Israelites had crossed, the priests came with the ark. As they stepped onto the bank, the river began flowing again. They set up camp at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho. Joshua took the 12 stones and set them in the earth as a memorial to the people of Israel. Now the 40,000 Israelite soldiers were gathering. It was a fearsome sight. The king of Jericho ordered the city gates to be shut tight and bolted. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Go to Jericho with your soldiers and march around the city once. Take the ark with you. 7 priests must walk in front of it, sounding their trumpets. Do the same for 6 days. Then, on the 7th day, march around the city like this 7 times. At the end, the priests must sound a long trumpet blast, and everyone must shout together as loud as they can." And so, the soldiers advanced on Jericho and marched around the city walls. The priests sounded their trumpets in front of the ark. The wall shook, and inside the people watched in terror. For 6 days, this 5th century CE mosaic from the Basilica Santa Maria Maggiore, Rome, Italy, shows the fall of Jericho. The Israelites marched. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times, and the priests raised their trumpets. A long, mournful blast filled the air. At this, Joshua gave the signal, and the Israelites shouted at the top of their voices. But as the chorus faded away, another sound could be heard. A rumble came from the city walls, and it grew louder. Suddenly, cracks appeared in the stone and bricks. The Israelites watched as the walls collapsed, crashing to the ground. Without its great wall, Jericho was at the mercy of the Israelite soldiers. They rushed in and killed every living thing. The soldiers knew where Rahab lived because of the scarlet ribbon in her window, so she and her family were spared. Go to Jericho with your soldiers and march around the city once. Take the ark with you. Understanding the story. As the Red Sea parted during the Exodus, the Jordan River stops flowing so the Israelites can cross to Jericho. The 12 stones stand for the 12 tribes of Israel. The 7-day siege represents completion, reflecting God's people finally inheriting the promised land.